Her body was dragged for a good 10 to 12 kilometers. The Special Commissioner of Police, Shalini Singh, she has submitted a report to the Home Ministry which highlighted the lapses by the police picket, the PCR vans. This has now been further moved by the Home Ministry for further action against these errant police officials. A show cause notice has also been issued at the mid-level, and the investigating officer has been show cause for poor investigation. Arunima has more details on this. We'll try and get a sense from her as to how many police personnel have been issued these show cause notices and against whom action is likely to be taken. Remember, the preliminary recommendation that's gone from the Special CP who is investigating this matter, and this has been further corroborated by the Home Ministry, is suspension of these errant police officials, whether it was at the police pickets, the PCR, which did not respond, or even for that matter, the phone calls that were received by the police helpline, which went unanswered. So let me try and see if Arunima is there. Arunima, do we have a broad understanding of how many police personnel action has been recommended against?
So those nitty-gritties have been left to Sanjay Arora, the Delhi Commissioner of Police. Essentially, what the MHA has recommended is that all those police pickets, there were at least two on that route which the drivers were taking, the occupants of the car were taking. At least two police pickets have been found wanting, but the Delhi Commissioner of Police could look at the report that has been sent by Shalini Singh and decide if there were more. All the PCR personnel on duty, their supervisory officer for dereliction, action has been recommended for all of them. It has been asked of the Delhi Commissioner of Police to look at the way PCRs operate in the city. The merger of PCR with district police that happened in the last couple of years, a review of that has been recommended because PCR response time was found way beyond the 3 minutes that is recommended, and more lighting, more CCTV cameras in the outer Delhi area, because it was felt that if the area was well lit and well patrolled, perhaps this could have been avoided.
Again, not just as far as this incident is concerned, of course, action has been recommended against the errant police officials, but you were talking about how there was a change of system that happened in the last couple of years where there was the decision to attach these PCR mobile police units with local thanas. Is there a serious rethink on that system?
Well, I think it can be said confidently now that the system is going out of the window very soon. One of the reasons which was mentioned to the Ministry of Home Affairs by the senior officers of the Delhi Police is that decision to merge district police with PCR has not really worked. That decision was taken to give more manpower to the local thanas, more manpower to the SHO. But how it has backfired is what we saw in this particular case. Eyewitness after eyewitness made calls to the police control room. Originally, the idea was that the nearest police control room, as soon as it is spotted on their monitoring devices, the nearest PCR rushes to the spot, and 3 minutes was the response time. But because of this merger, the response time has gone down. We saw how for 40-45 minutes, eyewitnesses complained that nothing happened. Police was not responsive enough. So like I said, it's all but certain now that we could revert to the original system, and this merger between PCR and district police would end very soon.
All right, Arunima, we'll leave it at that. We'll see how this story plays out. It will also send out a signal to all those police officials who think of relaxing while on duty, who do not take their job seriously. Like in this instance, there was at least 3 PCR vans, as per the claims of some of the eyewitnesses, at least 3 PCR vans that passed by, and at least 2 police pickets where this car went past, and yet there was nothing done to stop this car, which had a human body right underneath it. Meanwhile, our big focus tonight on Brass Tacks, the perils of relaxing zero COVID are coming to hit home in China. Satellite images are now showing rows and rows of people outside crematoriums in major cities. By some estimates, more than 20 million people have died in China since the relaxation of norms about a month or so ago. And the estimates of the number of people falling ill ranges anywhere between 200 to 300 million. But China is being accused of suppressing the numbers. Even the World Health Organization has come out and said that there is massive underreporting of COVID deaths in China. The question is, will we ever know the reality of what is happening in China, and what may this mean for Xi Jinping's almost vice-like grip on that country? Remember, he had to sort of loosen it up. He had to loosen zero COVID because of those unprecedented protests. But now, if it's leading to unprecedented deaths as a result, how may that change his grip on power?
These satellite images of crematoriums capture how severe the COVID surge is in China. There is a long queue of vehicles waiting outside the funeral homes as people try to cremate their loved ones. In some cities, coffins are being lined up on the streets near crematoriums. Everywhere you look, there is another body waiting to be cremated. Some have been waiting for days to lay their loved ones to rest. Yet, according to China, only 40 people have died due to COVID since the 7th of December. And now the World Health Organization is saying that China is underreporting its COVID deaths and thereby lowering the organization's global data.
WHO still believes that deaths are heavily underreported from China, and this is in relation to the definitions that are used, but also to the need for doctors and those reporting in the public health system to be encouraged to report these cases and not discouraged.
But Xi Jinping is continuing to play hide and seek, just as he has done for the last 3 years. From not revealing the truth about the origin of the virus to concealing the real number of cases and deaths. It's been smoke and mirrors right from day one. So who will hold Xi Jinping accountable?
All right, on the talking point this evening, Aina Tanjun is a political affairs commentator joining us from Beijing. Dr. Sarah Pitt is a principal lecturer of microbiology at the University of Brighton. Jennifer Zeng is a Chinese whistleblower and human rights activist from New York. Ashok Sajjanha, former diplomat, and Abhijit Majumdar, consulting editor with First Post. Let me start with Dr. Sarah Pitt. We've seen these satellite images. This has been put out by international media. It's been put out by Indian media as well. There are reports to suggest that in major cities from Beijing, Shanghai, Wuhan, there are long queues outside crematoriums in major cities across China. But is there any evidence on ground to show that this is cover-up of the number of deaths caused because of COVID and there is massive underreporting of the same?
Well, it does appear that there is underreporting of the number of cases. We know that since they moved from the zero COVID policy to, full opening up, then in China, they've stopped doing the same amount of testing that they have been doing previously. And so therefore the number of cases, remember that maybe 1 in 3 people with COVID active infection and therefore are infectious to other people don't actually have any symptoms. And that's why testing is really important to actually track what's happening with the spread of the virus, and also in terms of tracking the number of people, if they're ill, is it COVID that they've actually got? So we know that that's the case in China, but it's also the case in many other countries where we're not doing mass testing anymore. So the number of COVID cases probably over the whole of the world at the moment is probably a bit of an underestimate.
Okay.
But what you can tell how COVID is going is by the number of people who are turning up in hospital with COVID or COVID-like illness, even if you don't have the laboratory backup for that.
All right. So essentially what you're saying is if by most estimates and what we've seen in other countries, if 1 in 3 people are falling sick, then in the case of China, that would be somewhere in the range of 300 to 400 million people. We're not seeing anywhere close to those kind of numbers. At least officially, the government of China is not releasing that kind of numbers. But let me ask Jennifer Zeng, the official numbers that we have from the 7th of December when the government of China decided to relax on zero COVID is 40 deaths from the 7th of December. So in a little over a month, it is said to be 40 deaths. But the numbers up until then, Jennifer Zeng, was 90,000 confirmed cases and 4,600 deaths. This, many are saying, is gross underreporting.
Yes, I think definitely so. From the day one of the relaxation of this COVID policy, I've been sharing, I think many, maybe dozens, I didn't count them, videos of different crematoriums in all over China, of people lining up, miles upon miles of people lining up outside the crematorium to waiting to the bodies to be cremated. And there are also a lot of online stories shared by the Chinese netizens of themselves of how difficult to get a place in the crematorium. I even translated a very long Chinese article about how he tried to get get his uncle's body cremated
Okay.
in Miyun County. It's a place, a small county near Beijing, and they actually hired people to line in the queue and paid them thousands of dollars of Chinese yuan to get a place to hire villagers inside. So that story were everywhere. So any people with any, I think, common sense or eyes or ears would not believe that the official number released
So
by the Chinese
I know,
Communist
Tangent.
Party.
This is what we have emanating from China. There are satellite images of long queues outside crematoriums. You have videos that are being shared by Chinese citizens on the ground of the rows and rows of people outside these cemeteries and crematoriums, and also these long lines outside hospitals. And yet, and now you have the WHO, no less than the WHO, and you heard from Mr. Michael Ryan, the chief scientist there, saying that there is gross underreporting of deaths by China. How is the Chinese government reacting to this? And B, isn't this exactly what scientists and doctors and health experts were saying, that you go away from zero COVID, and I guess the Chinese government didn't have much of a choice because of those unprecedented protests, this is what will end up happening. Even if a fraction, even if 1% of the people of this massive country, this massive population die, that is a huge number.
Yes,
Yes,
it is a
definitely.
huge number, and I personally know somebody who has, in fact, passed away, but I don't know if it was from COVID. But I've heard from friends, at least 3 or 4, who've indicated that they've had relatives who've died. So you can read the obituaries, which are not being suppressed or anything, and there's a sharp uptick in the newspapers every day. There's, something about the passing of somebody very senior, not somebody, many people who are very senior, and it is very sad from that perspective. But China's in a difficult situation in the sense that everyone was calling for them to go away from the zero COVID policy. When they go to a coexistence policy, everybody's still mad at them. So that the issue at this point is China does not want to give out, or so they say, any kind of misinformation. So they're being very, very careful. In the end, they say that the most accurate number is excess deaths, which I think the WHO agrees with. In terms of the interim, it's very difficult. I think your estimate of hundreds of millions of people who have had COVID is low. You've seen provinces reporting anywhere between 70% and 90%. Saying that people have had it or been exposed to it. So yes, there will be some deaths. Getting them accurately counted and why they died is very important. But we will, in the end, see from the excess deaths, and from that, you'll be able to determine how different countries did with their pandemic policies.
Ashok Sajjanhar, the problem though is there is still no accountability. China can continue to underreport. Like I said, the official figures from December 7th to today is 40 deaths, which is a gross underreporting of the number of deaths there. But who is putting them to account? The Chinese people, of course, it's an opaque system. It's not a democracy, so they can't expect to put their government under account. Even the international institutions, the WHO, the chief scientist is coming out and saying that there is gross underreporting. Somebody needs to hold to account. I mean, these are deaths. You can't just brush it under the carpet. And if there are tens of millions of people who are dying, all the more so how difficult it is to brush it under the carpet.
Well,
you're right, Zaka. I think
Ashok
it's
Sajjanhar, yeah. Thank you.
high time that, yes, yeah, you are absolutely correct, Zaka. I think it's high time that China was shown the mirror, and China was held to account. We've seen what happened in 2019, 2020, beginning of 2020. How China conducted itself, it did not give access to scientists from the WHO in terms of finding the cause of and the origin of the virus. So I think this is high time, because the manner in which the virus spread throughout the world was basically because China did not want to come clean. And right now also, this is exactly what we are seeing, that while China is not giving out the correct numbers, the accurate numbers, and the whole world knows that it is not giving out the correct numbers, it is, of course, a matter of some satisfaction. The WHO has mustered some courage, at least at the end, to say that China is underreporting and misreporting, while the way in which they had dealt with the outbreak of the virus from China last time was entirely different.
Okay.
But it has to be the world. It has to be the world community. Maybe not only one international organization. I think the whole world gave an easy pass to China the last time, but too much is involved. We have seen that the whole world has lost not only so many people, so many economies have been destroyed over the last 3 years. So it cannot be allowed to repeat again, because we see that Chinese tourists are now making their way into a large number of countries.
Correct.
China has taken it as sort of a political affront to itself if countries are demanding negative RT-PCR results
Tests, yeah.
for Chinese tourists coming. So it is the international community with the WHO and with other organizations. They have to come together,
Okay.
and they have to hold
Abhijit
China
Majumdar,
to account.
this whole thing started with these unprecedented protests that we saw in major cities in Shanghai and Beijing, which in a sense forced Xi Jinping's hand that he had to move away from zero COVID. And zero COVID was clearly very unpopular. After 3 years, people were just sick and tired. But if the net result of that is that tens of millions are dying, then how may that play out politically for Xi Jinping? Yes, of course, he's got an unprecedented third term. Many say he's the most powerful leader since Mao Zedong. But these two events, one being forced to go back from a policy that many say was his personal brainchild and he was adamant on it, and now that you've gone back, the flip side of it, leading to tens of millions of deaths, that again will stick on him.
Yeah, of course, Zaka. See, the thing is that China is now going through what most of the nations, including India, US, all the major nations of Europe have gone through. This kind of crippling COVID wave. China had, managed to keep an iron lid on that so long, but now it seems that it is just come out and come to bite it. Now the thing is, with this kind of deaths, realistically speaking, I don't see anybody, WHO, the US, or the world community as such, getting to forcing China to reveal the real numbers, or they won't be able to do it. But what this could serve as is Xi Jinping's moment of reckoning, a humbling reality check for Xi Jinping and China. See, the thing is that China, we have seen vis-a-vis India, China has started making reconciliatory noises since, their foreign minister's surprise visit in March. It was followed by Jaishankar's comment on two civilizations, ancient civilizations, having more in common than having differences. It was reciprocated by the foreign ministry spokesperson in Beijing. Then India, Russia, and China held the Vostok 2022 military drills. And we have seen, and also, we have seen a thaw, at least at 5 points in Ladakh,
Correct.
Including the Gogra Hot Springs, Galwan Valley, etc., etc. So, we are possibly going to see at least a softer China in the near future. One can't fully trust China given the dragon's extremely expansionist instincts. One shouldn't let the guard down, but one could be a little hopeful that China would want to be part of a multipolar world that is emerging.
No, absolutely. Be part of the rules-based order. Don't try to change the existing rules-based order because you feel that it's not working to your interests. But let me ask Aina Tangent, the moves that we are seeing, and I want to move slightly away from COVID into geopolitics here, whether it is the appointment of a new foreign minister who seemingly no one will call Qin Gang a wolf warrior type of diplomat. We've seen the Philippines president visit China, and there seems to be some reasonable understandings that have arrived at there. China, at least in terms of rhetoric, as Abhijit said, it is going easy with all the countries that it has territorial disputes with, including India. Do you see 2023 as the year where Chinese behavior, at least geopolitically, gets normalized, if you will? And to that extent, how much of a spoke in the wheels would be the COVID situation? Because if it gets out of hand, do you reckon that might hinder the road to normalization, as it were?
No, I don't. I think if you start looking at the economic forecasts, regardless of IMF, World Bank, versus the Economist Unit, JP Morgan, versus the Chinese one, you'll see that everybody's very optimistic. China's expected to be 3/4 of the world's GDP growth. I think that speaks volumes. But, it's interesting what you brought up in terms of Qinggang. I mean, there's been a very, very definite shift happening. The former spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been sent to the border. Qinggang has expressed that it's not about people who are at war with each other. It's about governments and ideologies. And I think they're taking a much softer, easier approach. I think they're going back to Deng Xiaoping's era, where you try to figure out what you can agree on and put aside those things you can't agree on. And in terms of normalization, China, they don't see themselves as being abnormal. What they have been trying to do consistently with RCEP, with the Belt and Road Initiative, with BRICS, which India is part of, with the SCO, which India is part of, is to try to create more peace and stability in the region. So hopefully, yes, I do hope that there will be more peace, more talks, more resolutions, more trade, and more economic activity. And I think that's Beijing's wish as well.
I want to ask Ambassador Sajjanhar that. What may that mean in the context of the India-China border clashes? Since 2020, we first saw that in Galwan, and then most recently we've seen this in the eastern sector just opposite Tawang, Yangtze. Does this present an opportunity, not least because the new foreign minister seems to be slightly more moderate than the previous one, or this sort of wolf warrior diplomacy that Chinese diplomats had come to embody over the last couple of years? How may India use this opportunity? Could India press for the two outstanding friction points, Depsang and Demchok, where we've had multiple rounds of talks but no resolution, and perhaps at a larger level instituting a new protocol, a new border management protocol along the 3,500-kilometer LAC?
As far as India is concerned, Zaka, our efforts are definitely going to continue. They have continued even when the earlier dispensation on the Chinese Foreign Office was there, and will continue right now, whether it is the two outstanding points or having a fresh understanding so that, there is peace and tranquility as far as the border is concerned. But, I find it a little difficult to believe, think that there is some softening as far as the Chinese stand is concerned. You look at India, and as you mentioned yourself, at the Yangtze border, there has been this skirmish. I don't think it gives any idea that, China is going soft on its outstanding territorial issues with other countries. You look at Taiwan, how China has, continues. It's not only after the 2nd August Pelosi visit, but even till very recently, how it has been trying to intimidate and threaten, Taiwan. Yeah. The point I would like to make here, Zaka, is that whatever changes, first of all, we'll have to see how the new minister handles it. Walking the talk, meaning saying something, is very easy. We've seen these words coming from China, but we've seen action which has been entirely opposite to what is being said. So we have to see whether, China is willing to walk the talk.
Okay.
Second, any change that might take place, that will have to be, that will be tactical in my view. I don't think it's going to be strategic, because China is on the back foot. That is why it will try to make some changes, some minor changes in the manner in which it conducts its foreign and security policy.
Okay.
I don't think it is going to, harbinger any long-term change in its approach.
Okay,
Zaka.
before I go back to our two medical experts and round off the chat, I want to get a quick word in from Abhijit Majumdar also on this geopolitical question if he's there. All right, he's not there. All right, so we'll get closing comments from Jennifer Zeng first, and then of course Dr. Pitt. Jennifer Zeng, again, to close out this circle, when COVID started back in 2020, the questions were around the origin and whether China was being truthful to the world about the origins of COVID. Is that question now dead, or will there be pressure if the number of hospitalizations, the number of deaths in China were to explode, manifold? Will there be pressure from the people on the establishment for more answers, more clarity on how did this almost once in a lifetime disease, how did it originate?
Yes, I think that is already happening or has already happened. At least in the US, the new Congress has just, established a special group on China, and the GOP, the Republican Party, also not long ago established a special committee, and one of the focus is the origin of the COVID. If we don't get to the bottom of it, we don't know what else, what other problems will happen. And I think the world should be very cautious now, is because what is happening in China is very different from what is happening in the rest of the world. So people should be asking what's really going on in China. Are there any new variant, or why the death toll and
Dr.
the
Pitt, I'll give you
symptoms
the
are
final
so
word
severe?
on both of those points that Jennifer Zeng raised. Is this a new variant? Should the world need to have answers to that question? Should the Chinese authorities be more open to providing those answers? Because if it's a new variant, then it is of concern to the rest of the world. It may also see travel restrictions, the kind of which some countries have imposed on Chinese visitors. And secondly, do you believe that there will be any degree of accountability, forget about accountability, at least truth as to the origins of COVID-19?
So in terms of whether it's a new variant, we just don't know. We do know that there are new variants arising all over the world. There's this XBB version of Omicron, which has arisen in the USA and in Europe. And in terms of for the rest of the world, it is really important that everybody sends in lots of samples for the really detailed analysis so we can pick up variants wherever they arise.
Okay.
So we do need to kind of keep an eye on what's happening in China. And if a new variant does arise there, the conditions that they've created with people moving, and particularly for Chinese New Year, there's going to be another mass movement of people, that the opportunity for a new variant to arise is very strong. But I have to emphasize that so far we don't have any evidence that anything has happened.
Okay, I'm completely out of time. I'm sorry I have to interrupt the chat, but thank you very much to all our guests. We'll see if there is clarity on the exact number of cases and deaths in China, as also indeed whether this is a new variant. Earlier I spoke with George Yeo. He's been a former foreign minister of Singapore, one of the most renowned scholars of foreign policy here in the Asia Pacific. He's now a visiting professor at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. And I asked him on both of these questions about China going away from zero COVID and the massive number of cases and deaths that we're seeing, possible underreporting of those cases, and B, what may the impact of that be on China's own geopolitics, as it were. For example, in the India-China clashes that we've seen over the last couple of years, is there a limited but certainly a window of opportunity to try and see if a new protocol can be established in those ties? This is George Yeo. I'll see you right on the other side of this quick break. We've had pretty much an active scenario over the last couple of years, the border clashes. How does India also walk this balance? On the one hand, we are very much invested strategically and militarily with the United States. Yet at the same time, there is a direct challenge on the borders between India and China. So how do you see India navigating this?
Well, India's best position is to sit on every table and to choose the best from every table, including China, as it has with Russia. The border problems, to me, are a temporary punctuation. Xi Jinping and Modi have taken care to foster a very deep relationship between themselves. I remember how Modi hosted Xi Jinping in Ahmedabad, and how Xi Jinping reciprocated by hosting him in his hometown, in Xi'an, and how that most recent meeting was down in Mahabalipuram because of his Chinese connection and the China connection. I think the recent border problems were unnatural. I mean, think about it. Each side feels aggrieved. The Indian side feels passionately that China was in the wrong. I follow the Chinese media, and they feel passionately that India was in the wrong. And I don't know whom to believe. And I suspect that up in those high altitudes with low oxygen, before there was infrastructure, you might have patrolled the same ground at different times, and each believes that the line of control was further on the other side. And both sides now have better infrastructure. So now they're meeting each other more, and one would say, look, I was here last year, and the other would say, well, I was here 2 years ago, but I was here 5 years ago. Well, maybe both sides were right. So I think both sides should take a deep breath and say, look, what is really at stake? I watched how China settled its much more difficult border demarcation with Russia. And today it's no longer an issue. I watched how India settled its very complicated border problems with Bangladesh. And hey presto, it was settled. But both sides are completely capable of making enough concessions and really removing what is an unnecessary thorn in the side of their relations.
I want to talk about...
But I tell the Chinese side that, India fears China more than China fears India. And in India, there are still fresh memories of the 62 war, which in China is largely forgotten. But I tell the Chinese side that, look, rather than always talk about 50-50, maybe it should be 55-45 in favor of India because of that history. But I'm from Singapore, so I can say what I want. But I mean well because I have close links to both sides.
I want to talk a little bit about what's been happening domestically in China. This whole zero COVID and the unprecedented protests that we saw, in a sense, the sense is that the Chinese government had to sort of relent to the protests. How do you read that? Has that sort of given a reality check to Xi Jinping? Of course, he's the most powerful leader in China since Mao Zedong. But these protests and the fact that the government was forced to respond to these protests, do you see that as a reality check?
No, that is a serious misreading of what has happened. When Xi Jinping invited Indonesia President Jokowi to Beijing, I think around July last year, he was sending a signal that he would be attending the Bali G20 summit.
Correct.
And after that, Xi Jinping went to Bob Astana, and he was in Samarkand for the SCO meeting, where even though he sat next to Modi, stood next to Modi, they did not even look at each other, which seemed rather schoolboyish on both sides at that time, So after the 20th Party Congress, the first agenda item of the first meeting of the new Politburo Standing Committee was on COVID relaxation, and they issued 20 measures. And that was before the demonstrations. So the demonstrations might have affected the way they carried out the relaxation, but it was not the cause of it. And once China opened up, the concern was not with lack of relaxation, but too much relaxation. But it's hard to fine-tune COVID, as we all know. It's a transient. I don't think it's as serious as people think. The fact that China imposed no restriction for Chinese New Year, which is coming around the corner, which is the greatest migration of human beings on the planet, the fact that they did not see fit to have any restriction, I think showed the degree of self-confidence that they have.
Thank you, Zaka. Zaka, I think what Mr. Owaisi says has always been about mismeasuring contexts and mismeasuring things which are no longer in public currency. For example, I don't think when Mr. Bhagwat was talking today, he spoke anything about citizenship at all. So the questions that Mr. Owaisi are raising are far-fetched, and actually these are questions which will create two larger divisions in society. Let's listen closely to what Mr. Bhagwat said. He is talking about a fundamental idea of way of life in India. He's talking about, and I don't want to go into details of what Hindutva means and all of that. I don't think there should be a problem with it. See, Zaka, from 1980s onwards, ever since Martin Kramer coined the term political Islam and wrote books and subsequent articles about it, it has sparked a debate world over on the supranational nature of political Islam. Now, this is for if people believe in Islamic academics taking center stage in Indian politics today, then I think they need to make themselves clear what is the version of Islam that they want to follow. Do they believe in nationalism? Do they have supranational ambitions? These are questions that will be confronted
again,
with.
Shubrashta,
I disagree with Mr. Sapra when he says...
Shubrashta, by saying that, you are again saying that Muslims of India need to prove their nationalism. Why? They are as much Indian citizens as you are or I am or anyone else is.
I don't want to be misconstrued, Zaka, so allow me to explain myself in 30 more seconds. No, I am not saying that Muslims need to prove their nationalism at all. I am just saying that in a vitiated atmosphere, when a large section of Muslim majority feels that they are maybe insecure in the Indian soil, or maybe the new government is trying to clamp down upon them, I think the academics in the Muslim world need to come together and identify for the larger benefit of the public what their views on nationalism is. It doesn't make them anything less national. It doesn't make them less national.
Okay.
It doesn't make them less patriotic. For sure, I mean, people like us who have grown up listening to stories of partition, we have known that if there was a Muhammad Ali Jinnah, there was a Maulana Abul Kalam Azad who absolutely detested, abhorred partition and took cudgels with Nehru against that.
Dr. Nalan Mehta,
there's no question, there's no question
of
doubting Muslim
let me go on to our next
nationalism.
guest. Dr. Nalan Mehta, one of the other things that Mr. Bhagwat said, and I want to quote again, this war is not against an enemy outside, but against an enemy within. So there is a war to defend Hindu society, Hindu dharma, Hindu culture. Foreign invaders are no longer there, but foreign influences and foreign conspiracies have continued. So since this is a war, people are likely to get overzealous. Although this is not desirable, yet provocative statements will be uttered. Again, opposition is saying that, instead of saying this will only fan the flames that have been lit by the likes of a Pragya Thakur. Now, why doesn't the RSS chief come out and say that what Pragya Thakur said, asking or exhorting Hindus to keep their weapons ready, if he condemned that, that would have sent an unequivocal signal to people like her. Instead, by saying this is overzealousness, it may not be desirable, but provocative statements will be continued to be uttered. Isn't he fanning the flames? Isn't he sending a signal to these elements that aapko jo marzi bolna hai bolo?
No, Zaka, in fact, I think that this is a very important interview by the RSS Sarsang Chalak. In fact, I think this is a signal from the Sangh that that for those who overstep the line, for the extremist elements on the Hindutva right, to pipe down. The context of his entire statement in the interview was that do you think that there is too much aggression happening, so too many aggressive statements happening from within Hindus? And his answer was specific to that. In fact, he alluded to Shivaji Maharaj. He specifically spoke about the fact that's when he spoke about this 1,000-year war, which is the Sangh's view on this, where he specifically said that, look, there was a time when this happened, but right now, we are in a position of dominance, and he was speaking about Hindus in particular and how the Sangh views that. He says that because of that, there was a time, and he specifically talked about the Ram Janmabhoomi movement as well, saying that a slogan was formed, there was a movement, but now a temple is being made, Hindus are secure, so therefore you cannot have the same rhetoric of aggression. So therefore, and he actually said people should introspect within. In fact, in many ways, it was almost like a Deng Xiaoping statement that we now need to look at the next step forward, and you don't need to have the same rhetoric of aggression as before. And in
but did he say anything that would send out a signal to these elements? You can call them fringe, mainstream, whatever, elected representative from Bhopal, I don't know how fringe she is, but did he say anything in that interview that sends out a signal to these people that, look, you cannot be making or seen to be making these provocative statements? Was there anything in that interview?
he did not specifically mention the representative from Bhopal, but he made a generic statement that this kind of aggressiveness is not necessarily conducive.
Okay.
Now, they might have been private messages sent out, but in the overall context, in the way that this was said, the length at which he spoke about, I think this is an unequivocal signal from the Sangh to extremist elements to pipe down. Or whether this is enough or not is we'll have to wait and see.
So let me ask Tausif Ahmed Khan, supremacist statements have been made from Muslim leaders as well. I just want to give you a compilation of quotes. Waris Pathan says in February of 2020, हम सिर्फ 15 करोड़ हैं लेकिन 100 करोड़ पर भारी रहेंगे, ये याद रखना. Akbaruddin Owaisi of the MIM says, we rule this country for 800 years. 225 करोड़ मुसलमान हैं, हमें 15 मिनट ही चाहिए विदाउट पुलिस टू शो 100 करोड़ हिंदू की हम क्या कर सकते हैं, कौन ज़्यादा पावरफुल है. Welcome back. 2 days after a 40-feet metro pillar fell and crushed a woman and her 2.5-year-old son to death, apathy continues to sink Bengaluru. Today, a giant sinkhole appeared right on Brigade Road, bang in the heart of the city. One biker was injured, and it's not just Bengaluru. A young woman today died in Kolar while trying to avoid a pothole. So is the Aam Aadmi simply last priority amidst all this talk by netas about hijab and halal and Tipu Sultan? But first, the story.
Loose pillars, giant sinkholes, killer potholes, severe waterlogging. Bengalurians are paying taxes for this mess. Days after an under-construction metro pillar crushed a mother and her 2.5-year-old son to death, no lessons have been learnt. This giant sinkhole appeared in the middle of Bengaluru's busy Brigade Road. The road suddenly collapsed while metro construction work was on nearby, injuring a biker.
And suddenly, I don't know. But the road is very clearly is there, but suddenly went down. Suddenly went down.
Within minutes of CNN News 18 reporting the story, officials scrambled to fill the sinkhole.
There is a major sinkhole that has in fact appeared where a biker hit this and met with a severe injury as well. But right now, therein the civic body is swinging into an action. This major sinkhole is now getting filled with the concrete.
The apathy is not restricted to Bengaluru. A 24-year-old woman died while trying to avoid a pothole in Kolar. She was on a two-wheeler and lost her balance and fell. A truck came from behind and ran over her. With no end to this criminal and killer apathy, is the Aam Aadmi simply the last priority for our netas?
You can call us on that question on 0120-434-1895. We're opening up our call lines. The number's flashing on the bottom of your screen as well. Call us and tell us what you think. Is the Aam Aadmi, the ordinary resident, the ordinary citizen, the last priority for our netas? Ashok Gowda is Karnataka BJP leader, Nagaraj Yadav, Congress spokesperson, Srinivas Alwali, citizens' rights activist, and Sandeep Anirudhan is convener of Citizens Agenda for Bengaluru. Ashok Gowda, I mean, this is Brigade Road. This is not in some far-flung corner of Bengaluru, right in the heart of the city. Shouldn't there be an investigation to find out how in the heart of the city a sinkhole appeared? It's got to be either of two reasons. Either there was water that was there under the main tar, the main concrete, or it was bad construction quality material that was used. Shouldn't heads roll for this? This is the second accident that's happening in a BMRCL project.
See, let's understand, Zach. See, I don't know whether it is because of the BMRCL construction activity this sunk has happened, or is it because of the tender for Shore Road when the Congress regime was in power, when the Church Street and Brigade Road were constructed, and apparently the Shantinagar representation is by N.A. Harris.
Sir, surely this road would have been laid and relayed in the last 5 years. Surely you can't say this sinkhole is because of the tarring that happened before 2018.
No. I'm not going to say that. See, what is the point is, tender for Shore Roads have been made with urban infrastructure where all the infrastructure like UGD cables, water lines and sewage treatment plants and drainage systems, everything was taken below. And there were pipes also which were laid. And if there was a quality of the pipes which were laid to carry out all this urban infrastructure related underground system, and if the quality of those things were very poor, definitely this could have happened.
Sir,
That's not.
again,
I'm
I
not going
very
to come to the
humbly I
conclusion.
beg to differ. It
No,
shouldn't
no.
be that only in Brigade Road there are sinkholes
As
because there was faulty pipes that were put down. And in any
as
case,
a
like I said,
qualified urban
that
infrastructure
happened.
expert
That happened
with an
before 5 years ago. Surely this road would have been laid and relayed in the last 5 years. Rains have happened in the last 5 years, so I don't buy that logic. But Nagaraju Yadav, it's not like there were no pothole deaths when Congress was in power. Between 2013 and 2018, there was also deaths. Last count, 2021, the NCRB figures that we have, pothole deaths in the city of Bengaluru alone, 654. That is 654 people who should not have died.
See, let us not have a blame game today. The people are in power today should answer the question which is raised today by the news channels today. The pothole city has become, Silicon City has become the pothole city and a garbage city, and the High Court has been summoning the BBMP commissioner number of times and asking whether the Prime Minister or a President of India should visit Bangalore to make the roads all right. It is not only to the Bangalore city, you even go to Belgaum, you go to Kolar, you go to Hassan, everywhere the situation is same. Saying this, what I'm trying to say is, 2 days back we saw a pillar was crashed to one of the families. And today we saw one on Brigade Road. If the status of Brigade Road is that status, what happened to other roads in Bangalore city?
Okay.
The highest taxpayers in the country is from Bangalore. And the people of Bangalore are suffering today with the potholes, and every alternate day the people are dying in Bangalore with an accident due to potholes is not acceptable to the people of India and people of Bangalore and people of Karnataka.
You know,
the
crux of the matter, and I want to ask Srinivas Aluvali this, Mr. Nagaraj, I think you may need a glass of water. Let me go to Srinivas Aluvali. Srinivas Aluvali, the crux of the matter is this. I think one of the points that Mr. Nagaraju made is valid. The amount of direct taxes collected from the city of Bengaluru in the year 2021-2022, both corporate and personal income tax, was 1.69 lakh crore rupees. And what the BBMP, which is the city government, what it got, its budget outlay was 10,480 crore rupees. Not even 10% of the direct taxes collected from Bangaloreans. I'm not even going into indirect taxes. I'm not even going into GST. The problem is, the amount of money that's collected from that city, not even a trickle of it, finds its way back to the city.
I'm so glad you brought this point up because nobody does. And it is very important to understand this. We keep saying taxpayers, but our taxes are going to places other than Bengaluru. Our taxes are going to Delhi, rightly so, and then to the state capital and state government of Karnataka, which they should. But is there a proportional amount coming back? The answer is absolutely not. Not only the amount of money is not coming back, it is coming back in unaccountable way. The BMRCL, the metro, agency that builds metro, is a joint funded operation between the union government and state government. It is not under the control of the mayor or the city commissioner or the Bangalore Municipal Corporation. So they're a different agency. They operate with their own deadlines. They do collaborate, try to collaborate, but we just saw in 2 days what happened in these things, right? There is no coordination that allows the alternate routes to be made available when there is a massive construction happening. There is no proactiveness involved in it because all our taxes are going to so many different places. None of them are elected or accountable to the citizens of this city. And then we have a governance model that is really, in the 19th century where Bengaluru is a 21st century city. Our governance model is broken. We are tweeting the Prime Minister and the Chief Minister for the smallest of things, whereas we don't even have an elected councillor corporator. Even if we had them, God forbid if the elections were held and we did have a mayor and the councillors, they have very limited powers to take care of these things. And they will also point fingers at somebody else.
So the fact is that Bangalore has not had a mayor for the last 3 years. It has not had a functioning BBMP house, just like you have the assemblies, a BBMP house for the better part of the last 3 years. I've got 3 callers, after which I'll come to Sandeep. First caller is Kumaran calling us from Bangalore. Kumaran, yes, what do you think is the reason for why Bangalore has third world infrastructure with first world aspirations?
Well, Zaka, thanks for taking this topic. I think the major reason why we are going through all this is the total lack of accountability. We cast our votes, we elect these people. At the end of it, what are they doing? Nothing. We are talking of a lack of a mayor or a deputy mayor. Even when they come to power, they're not going to do anything for the city. They spend a lot to get the tickets to fight elections. At the end of it, they're busy collecting back the money and paying back to the party which gave them the ticket.
All right.
This is the pathetic situation which we are in. We'll have the political spokesperson out there defending each other. At the end of it, we'll forget all this and then keep going. We need to live with it.
All right, Kumaran, thank you for your call. Sriram is also calling us from Bengaluru. Sriram, go ahead.
Hey, hi. Thanks for having the call and allowing us to talk about it. See, I've been in Bangalore since 2004, and I just seen this. Governments come, governments go. Irrespective of who it is at the helm. This has been the situation for the last 18 years. That's how I've seen Bangalore.
Okay.
The road conditions have not improved. I don't think there's any kind of a planning in the way how all the infrastructure project needs to be done. And the quality of execution has also been bad, and it has also been very slow.
All right. Thanks for your call. Maria is calling us from Bengaluru. Maria.
Yeah, sadly, I don't really have very much different to say from what the earlier two people have said. Notoriously, Bihar used to be the most corrupt state. When I was living up in the north, I moved down to Bangalore maybe about 25 years ago. And over a period of time, I realized that Karnataka per se is one of now the most corrupt state. And sadly here, the corruption is for the sake of corruption. And, it's not like corruption doesn't exist in other parts of the country. It does. But, I always say there's honor amongst thieves, where if you take a bribe, something gets done. Or if you take a commission, something gets done. Over here, people are taking bribes, taking commissions for the sake of taking bribes and commissions, because they know they're going to be in power now and maybe not later, so let me make as much money as I can.
All
so
right.
It's really sad that, as you've said on your show, the highest tax-paying city in the state, and Brigade Road is probably the highest tax-paying area of Bangalore. That the infrastructure should be so bad.
All right. Thanks very much for your call, Maria. Before we go to more callers, let me go to Sandeep. Sandeep, again, what is the political incentive today? There are 28 legislators from Bengaluru city. I think there are 7 ministers in Mr. Bommai's cabinet who are from Bengaluru city. But there's no incentive for them. Today there's a sinkhole. Yesterday a metro pillar fell on somebody. Somebody died. There's no penalty, or at least the fear of penalty that, look, these voters will ask me questions or these voters will vote me out. That is not there. There's no incentive for these politicians to be held accountable.
Yeah, Zaka, this has to be addressed at 2 levels. Number one, most people are aware that the 74th Amendment was legislated in 1993, 3 decades. We have not, as per the amendment, all cities are supposed to have an autonomous, decentralized city government which merges all the services of the city. Mind you, BBMP only handles 2 or 3 services. Everything else is being managed by multiple parastatals and state government departments. So basically, while we all question the BBMP typically is not in charge of most of the things that are going wrong with the city. Second thing, the state government keeps it like this because then, as you rightly pointed out, there's so much money going out of the city, they can control all those funds. And the third thing is, at a micro level, what does it take to pin responsibility? If you go to Singapore, every road, every public infrastructure has a visible board, a display board, which actually says what was this project, when was it executed, which company executed it, who's the engineer in charge. Can't we have that board in Bengaluru? With all these details, be able to pin responsibility to the company.
Okay, let's get more callers in, and after which I'll go back to the political spokespersons. Mahesh is calling us from Bangalore. Mahesh.
Yeah, good evening, Zaka. So my question to the BJP spokesperson is basically, I want to know the data, how many contractors have been booked for the shoddy work which they have done, and or the license cancelled. As a citizen of Bangalore, I think I have the right to know the information.
Good question. Thank you for your call. Anand is calling us from Bangalore. Anand.
Yeah, good evening.
Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, can I start?
Yes, you can. Anand, go ahead. I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, basically, every day we are getting this problem, the problem of pothole and all these things. Basically, it is for the last 5 years, 6 years, not there. Basically, it has been happened due to non-maintenance. No one is looking after. They are lying their road instead of 6 inch. They are lying only 2 inches road. No one is there to see through the maintenance. Basic maintenance. No one is taking care of maintenance. But if you give every 180 days time to get all things to be maintained on a time, there will be a corruption rate will go down, na?
All right, Anand, thank you for your call. Last caller is Nikhil from Bangalore. Nikhil, yes.
Yeah. Hi, Zaka.
Hi.
So I just wanted to bring out one topic which happened recently in front of my house. So two weeks before, after the High Court judgment, so they closed all the potholes with little bit of damper, but just 2 days before they put full roads in our colony. So why the government doesn't know they are going to lay the roads again? So why they just want to spend more money of the taxpayers, and they're just doing this again and again?
All right,
not
Nikhil,
even
thank
one.
you for your call. Let me go back to the political spokespersons. The gentleman from the BJP, Mr. Gowda. One of the callers asked a very valid question. 2 days back, we had the metro pillar that fell. How many contractors, how many engineers has your government taken action against? Whether it's for the metro incident or for any number of these incidents that we're seeing. Like I said, in 2021, there were 654 pothole deaths. How many contractors have you fired?
See, let's understand yesterday's whatever the incident had happened in the metro thing, the contractor who's in charge and the engineer who's in charge, both the engineer has been suspended and the contractor has already been booked. And there is a procedure for all these contractors. There is a show cause notice which is issued, and then there is a blacklisting of these contractors. Then there is a criminal procedure which will be taken upon them. And at least as far my data goes, there is 25 contractors have been booked with the criminal charges, and more than 56 blacklisting of the contractors have happened in any of the in the past thing during our government. And as well as one thing the gentleman was saying, 6 inches, 2 inches. See, as a citizens, let them be responsible what they are speaking. Nobody can make a 6 inches road as a 2 inches, and that is not going to happen. See, some contractors definitely, if a 50 mm thickness of asphalt has to be laid, they'll do 40 mm or 45 mm. More below that, IRC code does not allow. It is actually the bill will not be sanctioned to them, and let them know. See, just because of the citizens, they cannot speak whatever they want.
Okay, Nagaraju Yadav, again, one of the things that a lot of residents have taken exception to is, I think it was when your government was there, you said, okay, we're going to relay these roads, it's going to be white topping. A, so white topping has been going on for the last 5 years, and B, even white topped roads are having potholes, Mr. Yadav.
No, Zach,
I just wanted to complete. I will not take any word against the citizens what they're talking. It is their right because they voted a particular party to come to power, and they are the taxpayers of the city and the country. They have right to question any political party for this matter. This particular BJP spokesperson is trying to say that there is a Congress MLA in that Brigade Road area. Did this even administrators talk about it? The ruling government is BJP, and the administrator of the BJP nominated administration is there in BBMP, and the High Courts have been questioning them day and night, and they trying to make a political blame game. This is not acceptable. Today, every death should be called as a government murder. It's a murder of the taxpayer for no reason of a taxpayer mistake. This is to be blamed very much.
No, I'm pulling away from both the political spokespersons. I'll give the final word to Srinivas. Srinivas, do you see this as this cyclical thing about, Congress in power for 5 years, BJP in power for 5 years, therefore there is no accountability, or do you see that there needs to be a fundamental shift in governance structures for people to be held accountable?
It's a fundamental issue, Jaka. The electoral democracy that we have is broken right now, as the reasons we all know. So at the point of, we can take a short-term approach and a long-term approach. The short-term approach, for example, the penalty for the contractors in the metro contract, as the media brought out, is 5 lakhs for a fatality. If the construction causes death, the contractor is supposed to pay a fine of 5 lakhs, which is a paltry sum when the contracts of metro run in the tens of thousands of crores.
All right, I'm completely out of time. I'm really sorry to interrupt, but I'm completely out of time. All I'll say is this, that once in 5 years, Bangaloreans, you have a chance to question your elected representatives. That time is now. Elections are around the corner. and please ask them all of these questions. We'll put these questions here in the media as well, here on CNN News 18. That's a wrap. Ayushmann joining you with News Epicenter.
Hello and welcome to News Epicenter with me, Ayushmann Singh Jamwal. Ladies and gentlemen, applying for a visa should be a very straightforward process. You go to the embassy, you give your documents, answer basic questions, pay the fees and wait for the officials to process the application and make a decision. Now, visiting Pakistan anyways raises a lot of red flags and comes under the scrutiny of multiple agencies, but it's not illegal. Indian citizens are advised to take all precautions and the decorum of diplomacy is expected as there is no ban on people-to-people contact. Now, students, pilgrims and academics regularly travel to Pakistan and go through the standard visa process. But imagine a situation where even entering the Pakistan embassy makes you fair game for not just perverts, but Pakistani propaganda. Now, CNN News 18 had an exclusive conversation with an Indian Sikh academic who approached the embassy in March last year for a visa. At first, she was told to come in May because the Imran Khan government then was unstable. But then this lady gets cornered by two Pakistani diplomats who tell her they can easily process her visa and during that conversation ask her questions about her sex life. They ask her if her faith allowed extramarital affairs, boasting that they can have as many wives as they want. Now, these men even grab the lady's hand several times, ignore her sponsorship letter and say she can only visit Pakistan if they sponsor her. Not just that, they even tell her she is an oppressed minority. She should support Khalistan, adding that Khalistan will be formed before the Kashmir resolution. So not only sexual harassment, there is propaganda at play as well. Now naturally, she gets up and leaves, but the harassment does not stop there. The weeks following the embassy visit, she is called and messaged multiple times where they promise her dinner and free stay. And finally they say, spend the night with us and you will get a visa in 24 hours. She names the two diplomats, Tahir Abbas and Asif. She raised the matter with the Pakistan embassy multiple times as well, and along with the nation's foreign secretary as well as Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto on Twitter. So she raised it at multiple levels. But no action has been taken so far. Before we get to our guests, listen in to the shocking revelations in this exclusive chat.
सर मैं पिछले साल मार्च में पाकिस्तान हाई कमीशन गई थी न्यू दिल्ली टू टेक वीज़ा टू विजिट पाकिस्तान। मेरे दो पर्पस थे, मैं गुरुद्वारा साहिब जाना चाहती थी, वहाँ के मॉन्यूमेंट्स देखना चाहती थी एंड सेकेंडली एक लेक्चर था जो मैं वहाँ पे डिलीवर करना चाहती थी। एक आदमी आया जो मुझे कहते हैं आपको वीज़ा मिल गया, तो मैंने बोला नहीं सर वीज़ा मिला नहीं है। तो रूम में ले गए, उधर बैठाया और उधर जनरल क्वेश्चंस पूछना शुरू हो गए, क्यों जाना चाहते हो। ही स्टार्टेड टॉकिंग अबाउट आर यू मैरिड, आई सेड नो सर। तो आप फिर कैसे रहते हैं, आप जिंदगी कैसे काटते हैं, हाउ इज इट पॉसिबल फॉर यू कि आप अपनी सेक्सुअल डिजायर्स के लिए क्या करते हैं। मुझे थोड़ा सा अनकंफर्टेबल लगना शुरू हो गया। फिर मुझे बताना शुरू हो गया कि मुस्लिम्स में तो हमारे पास एक कोई सेक्ट होता है, मुझे नाम भूल गया उसका, ही टोल्ड मी अबाउट सम काइंड ऑफ अ सेक्ट जो कि वॉर से वापस आते हैं तो दे मैरी फॉर ओनली अ कपल ऑफ आवर्स, 2 घंटे के लिए, वो इसी काम के लिए होता है कि वन कैन फुलफिल डिजायर्स। आपके क्या रिलीजन में अलाउड है एक्स्ट्रा मैरिटल अफेयर्स, क्या आपके रिलीजन में अलाउड है एक से ज्यादा शादी। तो करते करते ही अगेन हेल्ड माई हैंड, दैट इज व्हेन आई गॉट अप। मैंने कहा सर आई वांट टू लीव, और एकदम से वो भी उठ के कमरे से बाहर चले गए। फिर एक और आदमी आया जो ज्यादा जैसे सोफिस्टिकेटेड पॉलिश्ड होता है, ही वाज वेयरिंग अ बिजनेस सूट, तो वो आके बैठ गए। उन्होंने भी ऐसे क्वेश्चंस पूछे। उनका नाम है ताहिर अब्बास, ये जो पहले थे उनका नाम है आसिफ। एंड मैं मुझे कहते हैं मैं वीजा आपको दे सकता हूँ लेकिन आपको स्पॉन्सरशिप मेरे से लेनी पड़ेगी, जो आप लेकर आए हो स्पॉन्सरशिप उससे नहीं आपको मिलेगा। तो मैंने कहा सर मैं आपकी स्पॉन्सरशिप नहीं लेना चाहती। कहते हैं आप क्या फर्क पड़ेगा बैक एंड पे, फाइल में क्या लिखा है किसी को क्या पता, तो आप मेरी स्पॉन्सरशिप ले लो। मैंने कहा नहीं सर, मैं अपना नाम किसी भी पाकिस्तानी डिप्लोमेट के साथ एसोसिएट नहीं कर सकती। मैं खड़ी हो गई और मैं बाहर आ गई एम्बेसी से। 1 महीने बाद मुझे व्हाट्सएप पे मैसेजेस आए, तो उसके ऊपर उन्होंने लिखना शुरू किया कि आप आए नहीं दोबारा, हम आपको हैंडसमली पे करेंगे रिम्यूनरेशन दैट यू राइट अगेंस्ट प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी। वो मैसेज करें साथ में डिलीट कर दें। फिर मुझे समझ आई कि ये कुछ गड़बड़ है, तो मैंने उनके स्क्रीनशॉट लेने शुरू किए। देन आई एक्सपोर्टेड द एंटायर चैट। मुझे फोन भी आया जो ताहिर अब्बास का था, उसका फोन आया एंड ही डायरेक्टली सेड कि आप मेरे शहर में आए हैं, आओ मैं आपको डिनर पे होस्ट करूंगा। आई रिफ्यूज्ड डायरेक्टली, सर आई डोंट वांट टू हैव डिनर। देन ही सेड एज आई सेड अर्लियर यू कैन कम एंड मैं आपको स्पॉन्सर करूंगा। तो मुझे वीजा ऑफिसर को कहना पड़ेगा कि मैं इनको जानता हूँ, तो जानने के लिए व्हाई डोंट यू कम ओवर, यू स्टे ओवरनाइट एंड देन नेक्स्ट डे वी शैल ग्रांट वीजा। तब मुझे समझ लगी कि ये डायरेक्ट ऑफर है कि आप आइए मेरे साथ रात बिताइए और अगले दिन मैं आपको वीजा दूंगा। इससे पहले उन्होंने खालिस्तान के ऊपर भी बातें की है। कहते आप लोगों को तो खालिस्तान चाहिए। मैंने कहा नहीं, मुझे तो नहीं चाहिए, हम तो इंडियन है, वी आर वेरी हैप्पी एज एन इंडियन। कहते लेकिन आप ओप्रेस तो हो ना। मैंने कहा नहीं सर, हम ओप्रेस नहीं है, हम तो जो मर्जी करें अपनी मर्जी से। मुझे तो कभी ऐसा कुछ लगा ही नहीं। कहते आपको खालिस्तान नहीं चाहिए। मैंने कहा नहीं, बिल्कुल भी नहीं चाहिए, हमने तो कभी बोला ही नहीं। कहते आप देखना खालिस्तान आपका कश्मीर इशू के रिजॉल्व होने से पहले बन जाएगा।
Now, she says she has raised the matter with the MEA as well, but no action has been taken so far. Now, many have raised the card of diplomatic immunity, which raises some big questions. What does the Aam Aadmi do when they face such harassment from diplomats of another country? Are the legal options and avenues to complain limited given their diplomatic status? Are Indian citizens fair game in Pakistan embassies where they can be targeted without fear? Is it time for the MEA to immediately act? Because while we are tackling terror with surgical strikes and taking on Pakistan on the world stage, something like this happening to our own citizens makes us look very weak. So let's get to our guest. Rabindranath Sachdev, international affairs expert, is joining us on the broadcast, along with Karthik Chopra, advocate and activist, Ellen Rao, advocate and former DCP of Delhi, Anshul Malhotra, former diplomat, and Kamar Cheema, strategic and political analyst from Pakistan. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us on CNN News 18. Anshul Malhotra, I want to come to you first. When a situation like this comes to light, what is the procedure? What kind of avenues do people like you and me have when it comes to seeking some form of redressal? Because this is brazen sexual harassment inside an embassy. What can the Aam Aadmi do?
Well, Ayushman, I think the Aam Aadmi can do what this brave young lady has done. She has finally spoken out. It seems this has been going on for quite some time, and it requires a lot of courage. Now the ball is in the court of the Ministry of External Affairs. And I have every reason to believe that there is a truth in whatever she is saying. Otherwise, there is absolutely no reason she should be making such allegations. Now, for the Ministry of External Affairs, the first, I mean, if they want to take a relatively soft stand, they can ask the ambassador or the government of Pakistan to send back these officers with immediate effect. If not, on our own, we should declare them as persona non grata and expel them from here, because we can't afford a situation when we can let this go without being, any action, without any action being taken on our part. We can't appear to be soft on these issues. And I'm saying this on the presumption that there is a substance in what the complainant has said, and simultaneously saying that I see no reasons why she should be saying what she is saying. You see, it is a common, I mean, it's an open secret that the ISI operates under the guise of their consular officers with the protection of their diplomatic, immunity under the umbrella of their missions abroad. And of course, it's quite, it's not unusual for the consular officer to identify soft targets, enroll them, and then use them for their own purposes, particularly if the person concerned is desperate to get visa. And in the context of India-Pakistan, it is indeed very difficult to get a visa to Pakistan. So they are trying to exploit her, misusing the vulnerability. All that is possible. But going to the extent, even honey traps are a common thing in the diplomatic, in the espionage activities.
Right.
When a foreign mission, the foreign intelligence lay these honey traps, and they target the useful persons, try to influence them, cultivate them, so that they can pursue
Right.
their interests.
But I don't think we're seeing a clash of two spies over here. This is just a lady academic who's being harassed by these two diplomats. You're saying that the ball is in the MEA's court, but the Aam Aadmi doesn't always have access to the MEA when it comes to redressal. You know, those options are very limited. You can't go to a police station and file an FIR against those two diplomats. So the options are limited. That's my point. Someone can get away with this crime so easily. Kamar Chima, I want to bring you in on this. When it comes to these kind of actions, I mean, people-to-people contact is not banned between India and Pakistan. Both countries have their differences, but this is a shameful act by Pakistani diplomats. And this lady has also said that she raised this complaint as per the grievance portal of the Pakistan embassy. No action was taken. She even raised it with the foreign secretary, even tagged Bilawal Bhutto on Twitter, but no reply took place. Isn't this an embarrassing thing for your country in India, where you have two diplomats? Not only are they sexually harassing an Indian academic, but they are also peddling this Khalistani propaganda towards her.
Well, I think there are a few angles to look this story. The first angle is that few years back, there was an Indian diplomat in Islamabad who was working for the Pakistan, and she was arrested when she came back in New Delhi. So I think India is somehow taking a revenge. Okay, so the Pakistani diplomats have not been in the honey trap. So let's try to malign the Pakistanis this way. So as this story is